Early America was teeming with tales and rumors of red-haired giants. Articles were frequently appearing in the local newspapers reporting the oftentimes unintentional unearthing of monstrous beings, many of which were well over 8 feet tall and barely looked human, possessing double rows of teeth, 6 fingers and toes, elongated skulls, and bizarre facial bone structures. Legends abounded among the native tribes as well. Legends of terrible cannibalistic giants that feasted on human flesh and terrorized the land. Such stories could have been easily disregarded as rank myth if it were not for the bones. The bones, so commonly discovered all over America, testified to the truth that there were giants in the land. In his book True Legends, Steve Quayle summarizes the situation. As North America became more and more settled, ever more skeletons of giants were unearthed in mounds, ancient unmarked graveyards and caves. Whole books might be devoted to just the news articles from the early 1800s to the mid-1900s that tell of the skeletons of giants discovered in the U.S. Such discoveries were not just an occasional blip on the news radar, but rather a common occurrence for our ancestors here in the U.S., and were reflected in the legends of Native American tribes throughout the Americas as well. As Steve affirms, there are so many news clippings, stories, and eyewitness accounts concerning the remains of giants discovered in early America that I could never do them justice in this short episode. But to give you an idea of their frequency and commonality, we will briefly review the ones featured in the first chapter of True Legends. In 1833, soldiers digging at Lompoc Rancho, California, discovered a male skeleton 12 feet tall. The skeleton was surrounded by carved shells, stone axes, and other artifacts. The skeleton had double rows of upper and lower teeth. Unfortunately, this body was secretly buried because the local Indians became upset about the remains. Large mounds in Illinois were discovered in 1835 containing huge skeletons, one of which was over 8 feet in length with a correspondingly large skull, with many other skeletons measuring at least 7 feet tall. Large bones were found in stone graves in Williamson County and White County, Tennessee. Discovered in the early 1800s, the average stature of these giants was 7 feet tall. Several giant skeletons were found in the mid-1800s in New York State near Rutland and Rodman. A giant skull and vertebrae was found in Wisconsin and Kansas City. A giant found off the California coast on Santa Rosa Island in the 1800s was distinguished by its double rows of teeth. In Ohio in 1872, an earthen mound was discovered to contain 3 skeletons that in life would have stood at least 8 feet tall. Each also had double teeth in front, as well as in back of their mouth and in both upper and lower jaws. A 9-foot 8-inch skeleton was excavated from a mount near Brewersville, Indiana in 1879. Skeletons of, quote, enormous dimensions were found in mounds near Zanesville, Ohio and Warren, Minnesota in the 1880s. In Clearwater, Minnesota, the skeletons of 7 giants were found in mounds. These had receding foreheads and complete double dentition. At La Crescent, Wisconsin, mounds were found to contain giant bones. 5 miles north, near Dresbach, the bones of people over 8 feet tall were found. In 1888, 7 skeletons ranging from 7 to 8 feet tall were discovered. Near Toledo, Ohio, 20 skeletons were discovered with jaws and teeth, quote, twice as large as those of present-day people. The account also noted that odd hieroglyphics were found with the bodies. In 1898, the Washington Post recounted a story about an R.A. Tomlinson who, while digging along a stream near Londonderry, Ohio, discovered a skeleton of a man which was found to be only about an inch short of 8 feet in length, and which authorities were convinced would have stood over 8 feet tall when living. The article concluded, quote, the skull was a third larger than the human skull, and the lower jaw was abnormal in size and thickness. Hundreds of people have viewed the skeleton, and it will doubtless be preserved as a curiosity. In 1908, in Huntington, West Virginia, a prehistoric mound was excavated. Workers discovered a variety of artifacts, as well as a gigantic human skeleton, almost 7 feet in length, with a frame described as, quote, of massive proportions. Miners in Lovelock Cave, California, discovered a very tall, red-haired mummy in 1911. This mummy eventually went to a fraternal lodge where it was used for, quote, initiation purposes. In 1916, the New York Times reported that in 1912, workmen for the Fairmont and Wyatt Railroad, working near Pine Bluff, West Virginia, unearthed a giant skeleton. The local newspaper described the skull as being, quote, the size of a 2-gallon bucket, with a low forehead and a long underjaw. In 1917, a huge skull found in an Ohio mound was discovered, which a Professor Morton described in Crania America as being of an unusually large size. In 1931, skeletons from 8.5 to 10 feet long were found in the Humboldt Lake bed in California. In 1932, Ellis Wright found human tracks in the gypsum rock at White Sands, New Mexico. His discovery was later backed up by Fred Arthur, supervisor of the Lincoln National Park, and others who reported that each footprint was 22 inches long and from 8 to 10 inches wide. They were certain the prints were human in origin, due to the outline of the perfect prints coupled with a readily apparent instep. During World War II, author Ivan T. Sanderson tells of how his crew was bulldozing through sedimentary rock when it stumbled upon what appeared to be a graveyard. In it were crania that measured from 22 to 24 inches from base to crown, nearly 3 times as large as an adult human skull. Had the creatures to whom these skulls belonged been properly proportioned, they undoubtedly would have been at least 12 feet tall, or taller. In 1947, a local newspaper reported the discovery of 9-foot-tall skeletons by amateur archaeologists working in Death Valley. The archaeologists involved also claimed to have found what appeared to be the bones of tigers and dinosaurs with the human remains. The Catalina Islands off California are the home of dwarf mammoth bones that were once roasted in ancient fire pits. These were roasted and eaten by human-like creatures that proved to be giants with double rows of teeth. These are just a sampling of the documented remains of giants discovered within the borders of the United States. Since between 1881 to 1890, the Smithsonian Institution tore through and leveled 2,000 of the ancient burial mounds that were once raised on the soils of this land, secretly carting off all of the artifacts that were hidden within them. We can only imagine just how many bizarre, gigantic skeletons, with 6-fingered hands, jawbone set with double rows of teeth, and massive elongated skulls covered in hoary red hair, are locked away gathering dust in the back rooms of the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. As the famous saying goes, truth is indeed stranger than fiction. Unfortunately, many Americans, even when presented with the cold hard facts of truth, will reject them in favor of the cozy warmth of the fictional world in which they reside. Reporting for SteveQuayle.com, I'm Timothy Alberino, and that's my analysis.